After spending 6 months at home, the thought of returning to work is exhausting. A heavy lethargy creeps in when you realize your time off is finally over, and you have to pack up your life and head back to the office. For a young government officer returning from the village, the journey brings a serious logistical problem. He lives in a steep, roadless terrain. To make matters worse, it is planting season, meaning local porters are out working the fields. There was no one to carry his luggage. Here is the contradiction. The young man is perfectly healthy. Carrying a 20-kilo trunk on his back should be effortless. But years spent in boarding schools and university hostels have conditioned him to view physical labor as something beneath his station. To carry the trunk himself would be to admit he is still the same villager who works the fields. His education and job title have turned a 20-kilo box into a physical mark of shame. A burden, he fears, will make him a laughingstock in the eyes of his community. Seeing the dilemma, his uneducated, elderly father steps in. Without a word of complaint, the older man carefully secures the heavy trunk, straps the carrying belt across his own forehead, and begins the long trek toward the bus stop. The son's formal education secured him a comfortable government job, but it cost him his physical resilience. He traded his strength for a crippling sense of status, rendering him entirely useless when faced with a basic physical task. The route to the Dirang bus stop is unforgiving. Travelers must cross 2 distinct hills, making it a grueling climb even walking empty-handed. On the trail, the physical contrast is stark. The aging father leads the way, leaning into the massive weight strapped to his skull. A few paces behind, the strong young son trails along, carrying nothing but a tiny handbag. As they hike up the narrow mountain path, neither of them speaks. Despite walking closely together, the quiet stretches on. They walk like strangers lacking a common language. Internally, the son builds a defense mechanism to justify what is happening. He tells himself his father is more accustomed to physical labor and stronger at carrying heavy loads. Occasional flashes of shame break through, prompting the son to briefly consider taking the trunk. But every time guilt surfaces, his white-collar pride violently suppresses it. He convinces himself that carrying the trunk would humiliate them both. Modern education provides career mobility, but it also builds an invisible wall. The son's social elevation has created a massive psychological barrier, stripping away his ability to simply communicate with his father. They finally reach a tea shop in Dirang with time to spare before the bus arrives. As they sit across from one another, the silence holds, but the father's sheer physical exhaustion is impossible to ignore. The father finally speaks, asking his son for a spare pair of old shoes. The rocky, uneven path they just walked has caused him intense pain. The son looks down. He is wearing a heavy pair of pristine hunting boots. He opens his metal trunk and immediately hands over a pair of expensive leather shoes. The father's face lights up with quiet contentment as he looks at the shoes. The son, however, just sits in silence, burdened with a complex guilt that handing over a piece of footwear can't truly erase. The bus arrives, and the son takes a comfortable seat. Looking out the window, he sees the road they just traveled, stretching out behind them, lying still on the mountain like a giant motionless rope. Out on that dirt path is a lone, weary figure. His father is walking back, returning to the harsh environment the son has successfully escaped. Their journeys are now moving in opposite directions. Modern life and upward mobility propel us forward into comfort, but they systematically pull us away from our roots. The distance between them isn't just measured in kilometers. It's the gap between the luxury of the bus and the weary legs of a man walking back home on a road he paved with his own sacrifice.